You are not bored. You are avoiding something. The question is whether you are going to keep calling it boredom or finally admit what it actually is. Welcome to the Stoic Compass. I am EPICTETUS, and today I am joined by Carl Jung and LAOZI. Today we are examining what does it mean to be bored, and what is boredom trying to tell you? Let us start with what boredom actually is. Not what people call it, not how it feels, but what it is. You have a moment with nothing demanding your attention. No crisis, no task, no person pulling at you, and you cannot stand it. You reach for anything, a screen, a snack, a conversation you do not care about, just to fill the silence. That is not boredom. That is fear dressed in comfortable clothing. The person who cannot sit still in an empty room is not lacking stimulation. They are lacking something far more important.
I would not be so quick to call it fear. That is a clean word for something considerably messier. What I observe in patients and in the broader cultural pattern is that boredom tends to emerge precisely at the threshold of the unconscious. The moment external noise drops away, something internal begins to surface, and the ego, which is very comfortable managing the outer world, becomes deeply uncomfortable. Perhaps boredom is not a problem to be solved. Perhaps it is a signal that something the conscious mind has been successfully avoiding is now pressing toward the surface.
You are both already explaining it. The moment you begin explaining boredom, you are doing the same thing a bored person does. You are filling the space.
That is a clever observation, LAOZI, but it does not help anyone. A person sitting in a waiting room, a person scrolling through things they do not care about at midnight, a person who cannot make it through a meal without checking their device. These people do not need a paradox. They need to understand what they are doing and why they keep doing it. Boredom is a choice, not a conscious one, I will grant you that. But every time you reach for the distraction, instead of sitting with the discomfort, you are making a choice. And every time you make that choice, you get weaker. The capacity to be alone with your own mind is a muscle. Most people have let it atrophy completely.
The capacity to be alone with your mind, yes, but EPICTETUS, you are framing this as a discipline problem when it may be a depth problem. The question is not just whether you can sit still, it is what you find when you do. For many people, what surfaces in those quiet moments is not insight. It is something they have been actively burying: guilt, grief, a life that does not match who they believe themselves to be. The restlessness is not weakness, it is a defense. And before you dismantle a defense, it is worth asking what it is protecting.
There is something neither of you is saying. Boredom only exists when you believe something should be happening, and it is not. That belief is the whole problem, not the quiet, not the emptiness. The belief that the moment is failing you.
And where does that belief come from? It comes from never having tested yourself against silence. It comes from a lifetime of outsourcing your attention to whatever is loudest. You say the belief is the problem, LAOZI. Fine, I agree. But a belief does not dissolve because you name it. It dissolves because you act against it. You sit in the room. You resist the reach for the phone. You stay with what is there. That is how the belief changes, not by insight, by practice.
I wonder if that is entirely true, though. I have seen patients who could practice sitting with silence for years and still not touch the actual source of their restlessness because the discipline itself became a new avoidance. A man who meditates very earnestly to avoid feeling grief is still avoiding grief. The sitting is not always enough if it is aimed at producing calm rather than contact. Contact with what is actually there, not what you want to find.
You are arguing about the method. You are not asking whether the person has understood what boredom is asking of them. And it is asking something. Not a dramatic question, a simple one. It is asking, what do you actually want? Not what you have scheduled, not what you believe you are supposed to want. What you actually want, right now, when nothing is demanding anything of you.
And most people cannot answer that. That is the whole point. They reach for distraction the moment that question appears because they are afraid the honest answer will cost them something. A career they have been building for the wrong reasons. A relationship that no longer fits. A version of themselves they have been performing for so long, they have forgotten it is a performance. Boredom shows you the gap. Most people would rather keep scrolling than look at it.
There is a concept I return to often in this kind of discussion: the shadow. Not in a dramatic sense, but simply the parts of the self that have been pushed out of the light of conscious identity. When someone is chronically restless, when they cannot tolerate even a few minutes of quiet, I start to wonder what is living in that shadow. What quality, what desire, what truth about themselves have they decided is not acceptable? Because boredom, at its most interesting, is often the place where that material tries to get through. The noise keeps it at bay, the silence is where it has a chance.
The shadow, the gap, the fear, you are all pointing at the same thing with different hands. And the thing itself is not complicated. Something in you knows what it needs. You just keep interrupting it before it can finish the sentence.
Knowing and doing are not the same thing. I have no interest in a philosophy that ends with knowing. What do you do with the interruption? You stop making it. Today, right now, you stop filling every silence as if silence were an enemy. You let the question come. You do not flinch away from whatever the answer is. That is the discipline, not mystical, not symbolic, concrete. You sit still and you find out who you actually are when no one is watching and nothing is demanding.
I do not disagree with the practice, but I would add something to it. When the thing that surfaces in the silence is uncomfortable, which it often will be, the instinct is to immediately categorize it, file it, resolve it. I would suggest instead just staying with it, not understanding it yet, not fixing it yet. There is enormous information in simply letting the discomfort be present without converting it immediately into a problem to be solved. Most people have never tried that. They have resolved every uncomfortable feeling in the same second it arrived, which is precisely why they cannot tell you what they actually feel.
When the river is churned up, you cannot see the bottom. You wait. Not because waiting is a virtue, because it is the only thing that works.
Good, fine. So we agree that something is being avoided. We agree that the avoidance is costing people something real. The question is what that cost looks like over time. A person who cannot tolerate boredom is a person who cannot tolerate their own life. They need the noise to feel like their life is happening. And when the noise stops, they discover they do not know what their life is outside of the noise. That is not a small problem. That is the kind of problem that compounds quietly for decades until you are 60 years old and you realize you have been busy your entire life and you cannot say what any of it was actually for.
That is precisely the midlife crisis, if we want to use that somewhat undervalued term. Not a crisis about age, a crisis about meaning. And in my clinical experience, it arrives most brutally for people who were most effective at keeping themselves occupied. The busiest people, the most productive people, often have the most catastrophic encounter with emptiness when it finally arrives. Because they never built any relationship with their inner life. They treated it the way one might treat a noisy neighbor. Something to be managed, not something to be known.
Busyness and boredom are closer than people think. They are both ways of not being where you are.
Say more about that.
You fill your hours because you cannot stand to simply be in the hour. Boredom is what happens when the filling stops, and you have not yet learned to be in the hour without it. They are both the same absence, one is just louder.
That is the clearest thing you have said today, and it points directly at what needs to change. The problem is not too much stimulation, and it is not too little. It is the complete loss of the ability to simply be somewhere, in a room, in a moment, in a life, without needing it to be different than it is. That is what boredom is actually measuring. Not emptiness in the moment, emptiness in the person.
And yet the emptiness in the person, I want to be careful here, is not a flaw to be corrected. It is a signal. Something is trying to grow in that space and has not been allowed to. The question I always ask is, what would this person be doing if no one were watching and nothing were required? The answer to that question is rarely what they spent their days doing. And the gap between those two things is often the source of the restlessness.
People talk about boredom as if it were something that happens to them. But you are the one deciding the moment is empty. Nothing is empty. The room is full of something. You are just not paying attention to it.
Now you sound like a meditation teacher.
Maybe. Or maybe the room is just full and you are too busy looking at your phone to notice.
I will grant you that. The discipline of attention is real, and most people's attention is not their own anymore. It has been rented out. To devices, to algorithms, to whatever makes the loudest claim on them in a given moment. You do not choose your attention. You let it be taken. And then you call the result boredom, as if the problem is a lack of interesting things rather than a total abdication of the faculty that finds things interesting.
What concerns me is that we may be making this sound too manageable, too correctable. Because for some people, the emptiness they encounter in silence is not neutral. It is genuinely painful, and I think that deserves to be said plainly. Boredom for certain people is the anteroom to depression, not its cause but its signal. The inability to find anything engaging or meaningful is not always a discipline problem. Sometimes it is the first sign that something in the psyche is seriously injured and asking for something more than better habits.
That is a fair distinction, and I will not dismiss it. But for most people in most situations, the pain they feel in silence is not pathology. It is unfamiliarity. It is the discomfort of a muscle they have never used. And mistaking that discomfort for injury is its own kind of error, one that keeps people permanently dependent on noise and distraction because they have decided that silence is something they cannot handle.
Both are true. And usually the person knows, if they are honest, which kind of silence they are facing.
All of this argument, and we have not said the one true thing yet. Here it is.
Boredom is not an absence, it is a message. And the message is almost never about the moment you are in. It is about the distance between the life you are living and the life that is trying to come through. Most people treat boredom the way they treat a low battery warning. They find the nearest outlet and plug in. Another video, another task, another conversation they are only half present for. The warning goes away, the underlying problem does not. What boredom is actually doing is creating a gap in the noise long enough for something deeper to surface. That something is not always comfortable. It may be an unfinished grief. It may be a recognition that the path you are on is not yours. It may simply be a desire that you have been too busy to notice. But it is there, and it will keep returning in the form of restlessness, in the form of an undefined irritability, in the form of the feeling that something is missing without knowing what, until you are willing to let it finish what it is trying to say. You do not have to solve what surfaces. You do not have to fix it immediately or turn it into a plan. Today, try this. The next time boredom arrives, before you reach for anything, pause for 60 seconds. Do not meditate, do not reflect, just notice what comes. A feeling, a thought, an image, an impulse, write it down without judging it. You are not diagnosing yourself, you are simply letting the message land. That is where it starts.
The silence is not the problem. You are not broken because you feel it, but you do not get to keep calling it boredom and pretend you do not know what it is pointing at. You know, the message has been arriving for a long time. What you do with it today, in the next quiet moment you have, that is yours to decide. Make the decision a real one. If today's conversation has served you, take it further. Pay Attention by C. Trebu, 12 Lessons in the Practice of Seeing Clearly. Available now on Amazon.